Coming up on this episode, the Warriors have made a quietly great roster upgrade, a playing tournament X factor for Golden State that you might not think of, and Brandin Podziemski, he continues to prove his critics wrong. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. The Warriors claimed an unconvincing 110-105 victory over the lowly Sacramento Kings at Chase Center on Tuesday night. The story of the game emanating from it might have been Charles Bassey, who delivered a stunning performance in just his second game with the franchise after signing a 10-day contract on Sunday. And in doing so, might have already proven that the Warriors have got a subtle but very significant upgrade here. I'm talking about going from Trayce Jackson-Davis, who the Warriors, of course, moved on from at February's trade deadline, and now signing Bassey. Now, it's obviously happened a couple of months apart. We had, obviously, the Warriors trading for Kristaps Porzingis. We then had Omer Yurtseven on a pair of 10-day contracts. But in Bassey, the Warriors might have made a huge upgrade when it comes to an athletic interior big man. We know their rotation right now ahead of this Bassey signing, and I suppose before Yurtseven as well, full of stretch bigs with Porzingis, with Al Horford, with Quentin Post, and Bassey gives them a complement that TJD could never really grab hold of when it came to his opportunity with the franchise, particularly after his rookie year, which was very impressive. But over the past two seasons, pretty underwhelming from TJD. And obviously, I think it was not overly surprising that the Warriors ultimately chose to move on from TJD in that trade with the Toronto Raptors. So not only right now do I think Charles Bassey might be a better basketball player than Trayce Jackson-Davis, he's also a year younger. He's also got over 1,000 minutes less of NBA experience, which would suggest to me, again, that age and inexperience would suggest that he's got more room to grow in the NBA. And so this is a smart bit of work by the Warriors if they can keep Charles Bassey on the roster. And there's plenty of question marks going into next season about what the center rotation will look like and if Charles Bassey's on this team beyond just this current 10-day contract. But his performance, yes, okay, granted, it's against the Kings, right? It's against the Sacramento Kings. And you know what? The Warriors struggling and being down in the fourth quarter, giving up a double-digit lead and having to essentially get helped by the Kings with that weird Seth Curry foul with a few minutes left. Not good. But Charles Bassey, his work on both ends of the floor, not only the 14 points and 12 rebounds, but 2 blocks, 2 steals. He was also quite impressive in his limited minutes, less than 10 minutes against the Houston Rockets on Sunday. He's just like a bigger, better version of TJD to me. Like both guys are fairly athletic. But my issue with Trayce was always, hey, you're 6'9". You're 6'9", and you don't have, you literally cannot score outside dunks. Like his finishing around the rim for a center was pretty appalling. I think after year one, teams really keyed in on, hey, this guy's left-handed and he literally can't go right. He cannot go right whatsoever. And so he just became a very limited offensive player because he was just like a dunk threat, and that was it. Like, because if you're asking him to finish layups, he just couldn't do it, right? So you're 6'9", you don't have any offensive scoring capacity outside of literally dunks. That's going to be a pretty limited NBA player, and that was always my concern, even after an impressive rookie year with Trayce Jackson-Davis. With Charles Bassey, you've got a guy who just he's bigger. He looks far bigger out on the floor, and therefore can be more of a presence when it comes to on the glass, when it comes to rim protecting, when it comes to finishing around the rim. Like the Warriors just have a bigger, better version of Trayce Jackson-Davis in Charles Bassey. The finishing with him yesterday, now he shot only 7 of 12 from the floor, which for a guy who is going to live around the basket isn't necessarily great. But I thought there were some finishes in yesterday's game that were like truly impressive in a way that like we just wouldn't have seen with TJD and obviously with QP and Al Horford and KP. Like those guys can finish around the rim occasionally, but let's be honest, like a high volume of their shots come from beyond the arc. They are stretch bigs, right? They are there to space the floor, and that certainly serves a purpose. And that's what the Warriors need when you've got Draymond Green, who's not spacing the floor, maybe a guy like Gary Payton II on the floor as well. So the Warriors definitely need those guys. But the complement of having an athletic big who you can actually run and pick and roll with, and that guy's going to finish emphatically at the rim. That's why I always thought there was an opportunity for TJD. He just couldn't grab it because, again, he's a very limited NBA player because of his lack of size and just like lack of finishing ability around the rim. Bassey's had he had a couple of dunks, had a couple of lobs, but he also had a few finishes that to me showed some real touch from a few feet around the basket. Like little flip floater shots kind of thing that we just never saw from TJD. Like how many times did TJD take a shot beyond the restricted circle? Just didn't whatsoever, right? And then he had a left-hand layup as well, I think, during the first half, little dime from Seth Curry, left-hand layup. And I'm just looking back at some of these highlights and I'm like, we just didn't see this stuff from Trayce Jackson-Davis, right? And this is not supposed to be a Trayce Jackson-Davis hate session, right? I wish TJD all the best. The reality is he's averaging 5 minutes a game and 16 appearances for the Toronto Raptors since the trade. Okay, do I think right now that Trayce Jackson-Davis is going to be a long-term NBA player? Unfortunately, I just don't think so. As opposed to Charles Bassey, who has had to work a lot harder for his opportunity, you would say. The Warriors are the fourth team he's played for this season, which tells me a couple of things, which is it tells me, hey, yes, you could look at it, I suppose, from a disappointing element, from a glass half empty standpoint of, well, teams just keep moving on from this guy. And if he was any good, teams wouldn't be moving on from him. And I understand that. But the glass half full approach is, the guy keeps coming back. The guy keeps going back to the G Leagues, put up huge numbers with Santa Cruz, which is exactly why, obviously, I was surprised that he didn't get signed over Yurtseven to begin with. And teams still are keeping an eye on him, right? Because they think there's something there, right? This is not a guy who teams are just discarding in terms of his NBA future. You've now had 4 different organizations who have signed this guy this season, which again, glass half empty. I understand it. You might think, well, they are discarding him after a short period because they understand he doesn't have a future. I'm more like, no, guys, teams are keeping tabs on this guy. Okay. And I'm trying to actually see it as an optimistic thing where if he gets himself in the right situation, then he can actually show that he's a bona fide NBA player. Let's be honest, when you're on a 10-day contract, you just don't have the opportunity to really show it. And he might not get too much more opportunity with the Warriors moving forward here. There's 3 games left in the regular season, right? But he only gets the opportunity yesterday because Kristaps Porzingis is laid out with knee soreness and Horford and Post have already got their injuries. So he has to play 28 minutes. He arguably probably should have played more, right? And so I just think he has an NBA level skill set, the ability to impact on both ends of the floor, pick and roll threat, runs the floor hard, incredibly active on the glass. He had 14 and 12. How many times do you reckon Trayce Jackson-Davis has done that how many times did he do that in his Warrior career? Once. Trayce Jackson-Davis did that once, where he got at least 14 points and 12 rebounds in the same game. Once in 175 games, including 9 playoff games. Right. So if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. And the Warriors got a 2nd-round pick out of this as well, which I'm still surprised they were able to generate a 2nd-round pick for Trayce Jackson-Davis. So this is a huge upgrade for the Warriors. Smart piece of business. And I'm really interested to see what happens in the short term over the next few games when Porzingis, I'm assuming, is going to be back. Horford and Post might come back here. I just think Post might be out of it now. It's too late in the season to bring you back. No thanks. Horford, you're a better player and a more experienced player, and we're probably going to need you in the play-in tournament. So, yes, we're kind of rushing him back. But how can you look at Bassey's performance on Tuesday against the Kings and axe him from the rotation and not give him any minutes? Even if Porzingis and Horford are available and you want to play Draymond some small ball 5 minutes. I'll tell you what, if Porzingis, Horford, and Bassey are all available, I just don't want to see any Draymond at center minutes. I don't. And in fact, if anything, I want to see some double big lineups. Bassey, Porzingis, Horford, Bassey, Porzingis, Horford. Any kind of combination, because I think that would work and I think would be a great contrast to what the Warriors are doing currently with a lot of guard lineups, right? Where I understand from Steve's perspective, no Jimmy Butler, no Moses Moody, no Guy Santos in yesterday's game. You kind of have to play a bunch of guards. No Horford, Porzingis, Post. So, like, people complaining about the 4-guard lineups yesterday, it's like he didn't really have a choice. But I think moving forward here, in order to give Bassie some minutes and opportunity, I wouldn't mind seeing some double big lineups, and then we'll obviously see what happens with his future beyond this season. Steph's back. The Warriors are trying to win 2 playing games to get through the playoffs and potentially likely take on the Oklahoma City Thunder for the first seed. So I've been thinking about who exactly is their X factor heading into the playing tournament. And it might not be who you exactly think. When we think of X factors with the Warriors, you probably think of Steph. And Steph, understandably so, because he could drop 40 or 50 in a playing game against the Blazers, the Clippers, whoever the Warriors end up playing, and just win a game of his own accord, right? It's Steph Curry. You look at other guys have actually shown some consistency over these past few weeks. Gee, Podz, GP2, like GP2's offensive consistency here in the last 2+ months is quite remarkable. Had another 14 points against the Kings. Like that dude's been quite incredible, it must be said. When I think of an X factor, I think I consider or define it as a player who can be really good or can be really bad. Like there's a big gap between their floor and their ceiling, and I just don't know what you're going to give me. Like I go into every game and I'm like, this dude could win us the game, this dude could lose us the game, and I'm not sure what I'm going to get. And right now, and I think injury is part of this, but right now, that's what I think of when I'm talking about De'Anthony Melton and when I think about De'Anthony Melton. Because his performances in the past 7 or 8 games have either been feast or famine, truly. And that makes things really interesting going into the playing tournament where you're in a one-off elimination game. Got to win it. De'Anthony Melton is still a starter for this team. Will he remain as such? That's going to be a big point, right? Steph is going to come back into the starting lineup at some point. Does De'Anthony Melton remain as the 2-guard, or is it Podz? I think it might be Podz based on his form and better form compared to Melton. But Melton still is going to play big minutes regardless. But it's been feast or famine with him over the past 7 or 8 games, right? And we finally got to see him back on track against the Kings on Tuesday night. 21 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, only 1 turnover, 7 of 12 shooting from the floor, 4 of 6 shooting from 3-point range. Had a really hot period in the second quarter there as the Warriors built a double-digit lead. It was really nice to see because I've been critical of him in recent games. I've put an asterisk on that and said, well, it's because he's been injured to some degree. I understand that. Hopefully he might be overcoming the injury to some degree while still playing. But he's going to be a big factor here for the Warriors over the remainder of the season because he is the kind of guy, I've looked at a couple of his recent performances and thought, if you flat out didn't, you've just been a negative in the game. If you didn't play, if you weren't available in this game, the Warriors probably would have won a game they lost. And in other games, it's like, oh no, we actually really need De'Anthony Melton's offensive production and he can be really helpful for you. If you look at his last 7 games, here are his scoring performances over the last 7 games. 0, this is obviously not in date order, but 0, 0, 5, 6, 14, 20, and 21. So 4 games of 6 or less points, including 2 donuts, and then 2 games of 20 and 21 points. So again, the gap between his best and his worst is significant right now in a way that I don't think was necessarily there earlier in the season where I thought he was actually fairly consistent. Again, I do think the injury plays a role in that. But it's not just the shooting, because he can just go 0 of 6 shooting from the floor, 0 of 4 from 3-point range, and you look back at it and think, geez, that lost us the game. Particularly if it's a 1-possession, 2-possession game, something like that. It's also some of the turnover numbers with him. It's he's had, again, in this 7-game stretch, he's had 3 games with 1 turnover. That's okay. He's had 1 with 4 and 1 with 7. So not only can he lose you the game because he can't hit water if he fell out of a boat in terms of his shooting, but he can also just turn the ball over in pretty horrific fashion. Now, we've only seen 2 total turnovers from him in the last 2 games. And I do think part of that is Steph being back, less usage, ball handling duties for De'Anthony Melton. So in terms of the turnover stuff, I don't expect to get to the play-in tournament and then lose to the Portland Trail Blazers or the LA Clippers and look back at it and say, we lost the game because De'Anthony Melton had 5 turnovers. I don't think the turnovers is necessarily going to be part of it because Steph is back. Again, less offensive usage for Melton. But the shooting and just the overall production is certainly going to be a big X factor to the Warriors for mine. And again, you kind of know what you're going to get from some of your other role players. Again, G's been incredibly consistent. Podz is now built consistency. Same with GP2. Draymond, I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with Draymond in a must-win one-off game that he's going to, at the very least, bring it defensively, at the very least. And then offensively, look, it's a question mark. I suppose there's some kind of X factor on, Draymond could go 0 of 4 from 3-point range, or it could hit 3 or 4 from 3-point range, and that could be a big difference. But at the very least, I know he's going to bring it defensively. Kristaps is probably another way you could say he's a bit of an X factor, perhaps because the dude could have a sore lower back and leave the game at any time. He might not play at all because he might just get sick an hour before the game. There's some X factor there, obviously, with Kristaps Porzingis, but even he is well, I know he's going to get up 10 to 12 shots, and he's probably going to get 15 to 20 points. That's kind of what Kristaps Porzingis is. If you look at his whole career, it's whenever he's on the floor, he's just a 17 to 18 point guy. That's kind of who he is. And so you kind of have some level of trust, I think, in some of these guys, even with the Warriors playing as a team pretty poorly, obviously, due to all their injuries and having a horrific record over the past few months, essentially, ever since Jimmy went out. Some of these guys have still built consistency, but De'Anthony Melton is kind of going in the other direction where it's his form has been pretty poor, but yesterday's game is a reminder that, hey, he's still capable of it. And what happens once we get to the play-in? Because the Warriors want to win 2 straight. They want to get through the playoffs. They're going to need performances from everyone, but not everyone's going to perform to their optimal level on the day, right? And De'Anthony Melton, the gap between his best and worst right now is pretty stark. And I just wonder how much the Warriors are going to lean on him in the play-in tournament, right? Because a guy like Pat Spencer plays 41 minutes yesterday against the Sacramento Kings. That's ridiculous. What is Pat Spencer doing playing 41 minutes? So looking ahead to the play-in tournament, Steph and Podz will probably start, I think, and then Melton will be your first guard off the bench. And they'll all play, Steph will play 35 probably if the game's close. It's an elimination game. He'll probably play 35. Podz, Melton could both play anywhere between 25 and 30, I think. And what the Warriors get from De'Anthony Melton could really determine their fate and their hopes of getting to the playoffs. Brandin Podziemski. Seen the posts on social media, the long list from a notable page listing every player that's scored 30 since Podz entered the league. Seen him getting booed at Giants games. The hate is getting silly. It's bordering on ridiculous. Let's have a look at Podz's numbers here in the past 7-8 games, and even just on the season as a whole, right? He's averaging 20.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 1.1 steals, shooting 54.1% from the floor and 45.8% from three-point range in his last 8 games. They are incredibly impressive numbers. Now, are they boosted a little bit by the fact that until the past 2 games, Steph Curry's been out? Yeah, absolutely. More offensive opportunity for him. This is potentially, to some degree, what we expected, I suppose. But you've got to give a guy his flowers when they're due. And even if you look at his numbers on the season, 13.6 points, 5.2 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.1 steals, 45.4% shooting from the floor, 37.3% from three-point range. Those are career highs in points and assists as well. Again, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler out for literal months I know you expect it from some degree, but that's the exact problem with Podz that I've always discussed for years. Like years I've discussed this, where because of how he talks openly and publicly to the media, and because really going back to the 2024 offseason after Pod's rookie year, where the Warriors made a big deal of keeping him out of Larry Markin and trade discussions, we had this expectations of him becoming a star. And again, as I will always say to you guys, once you get it out of your mind and your brain that this guy isn't going to become a star, and you take away that expectation, then you can just appreciate him for what he is and who he is as a basketball player, which is, guess what? A very good 25 to 30 minute rotation player in the NBA. Right? I just don't understand how this guy's becoming the butt of jokes to a degree where I've got mates who follow basketball very loosely, who go for other teams and don't know anything about the Warriors. And they are sending me memes about Brandin Podziemski or stats about Brandin Podziemski to fill the narrative or something like that. Like, it's actually ridiculous, because the problem with social media is that we just take it as fact. We can just take it as fact. We just assume things based on what we read on social media. So if you've got casual NBA fans, or quite frankly, even if you're a hardcore fan, if you don't go for the Warriors, then I'm sorry, you're not as tuned in as to what I am or what you guys are, who are just following the Warriors closely on a daily basis. And so you are getting so much of your material and your opinion by reading other opinions, right? And therefore, the amount of hate that Podz has got on social media and his reputation, again, I've got mates who send me memes who just genuinely think that Podz sucks, right? Because that's kind of what they see on social media. They don't watch every single second of every single Warrior game. They just look at what's on social media, and they look at numbers, they look at notable pages that are putting a list of every single player to drop 30 since Podz entered the league. And they just think that this guy sucks at basketball, which that could not be further from the truth, right? I don't know. I'd have to go through the entire league to work out where Brandin Podziemski sits in terms of best players in the league. I'm not saying he's top 100, okay? But he's certainly top 200, which makes him quite easily in the top 50% of NBA players in the league, okay? The other aspect that I always look at is, like, if you're on a rookie contract, that should also come with some level of expectations, right? Jordan Poole, Warriors love Jordan Poole. Loved him. Big part of a championship team. Better player at this stage. Like, if you're comparing Jordan Poole and Brandin Podziemski, Jordan Poole, a better player in like year 2, year 3 than Podz has been. Right? Rookie year, it's a completely different story. But particularly year 3, Jordan Poole broke out, part of a championship team. Right? Far better player than what Podz is right now. Warriors we love Jordan Poole. Supposed to take the keys from Steph Curry. Part of the reason we loved him is because he's a late first-round pick, cost control contract. You get him on a team and contributing alongside veteran players, stars who are obviously making the money. As soon as the Warriors give him a 4-year, $128 million deal, now, yes, there was the Draymond aspect of this. I completely understand. But once the 4-year, $128 million contract kicks in, that's when things change. His year 4, statistically, averaged what was then a career high in points per game. Yet there was so much criticism of Jordan Poole because we started looking at it in the lens of, hey, this dude just got over $30 million a year. Now, I have tweets from back then that say, hang on, whoa. I know he's got the extension, but that's to kick in next season. I don't want to be evaluating this guy as a $30 million player until he's actually on $30 million. So I was trying to push back on some of the hate at the time and saying, hang on, he's still on a rookie contract. Let's evaluate him in comparison to that. Okay, because so much of this is about value. Okay, and Brandin Podziemski right now on a rookie deal who again is set to make $5.7 million next season. That is a great contract. That is an incredibly valuable player on that deal. Now, again, if Podz gets to the offseason, becomes extension eligible, and suddenly wants $20+ million a year, then we're going to have a problem. If Podz does get that deal and is putting up these kind of numbers while making over $20 million, then I've got a problem. Yeah? Like, then I'll be looking at that in a different light. But right now, this is a young player who's just finishing year 3, who is finishing it in extremely strong circumstances. He's, again, 20.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 1.1 steals, 54% shooting from the floor, nearly 46% from 3 in his last 8 games. Okay, and his numbers on the season, again, for a guy on a rookie contract who is averaging 25 minutes a game. Now, I know in the season he's averaging 28, but of course, like, the minutes have been bumped up with Steph and Jimmy not being available and whatever else. He's also played in every single game, which for an old veteran injury-prone squad is like brings a lot of value, right? The dude rocks up and plays every game. So I'm just pleading to people, stop. And the people the audience that I'm trying to get to here aren't you guys as watchers of this podcast, unfortunately, or listeners to this podcast, unfortunately. They're to the more casual NBA fan who are non-Warrior fans who are just like jumping on board the Podz hate because they honestly think, looking at social media, that he sucks at basketball. Just so far, not the case. It's really disappointing, to be honest. And I want it to stop. I want it to stop. I've been critical of Podz. I don't have anything against being critical of Podz when the time's needed and when it's worthy of it. That's fine. You can be critical of any player. But like, this has gone way, way, way too far. Anyway, going to finish it up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can find me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Golden State with Mates on TikTok, Instagram as well. Warriors play the Los Angeles Lakers, 2 injury-hit squads on Thursday night. Looking forward to that one. Hopefully the Warriors can get a second straight win. Thanks again.